Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 solo PvP vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. This means vehicles that you can easily use as a solo player that you really don't get much benefit from having a second player or a third player with you when you're using any of these vehicles. Anyway guys, let's go ahead and get started with number 10. At number 10 we have the HVY APC coming in at $2.3 million. This vehicle is very good to use as a solo player because it's one of very few armored vehicles that have a weapon on them that you can actually switch to the weapon from the driver's seat. As you guys can see right here, I'm going to hold H on PC and you'll see my guy switch over to the passenger seat, and now I am in control of the gun on the top of the APC. This gun does pretty decent damage, and you can also equip it with a SAM battery. Although I recommend against the SAM battery because even though you can shoot a little bit faster, it does have limited ammo, only 52 missiles, which is still a lot, but you are going to have to rearm every once in a while, which is kind of annoying. So I would just keep the regular gun on this thing. When you're done shooting, you can quickly switch back to the driver's seat and get away. This vehicle is also pretty cool because it is an aquatic vehicle, meaning that you can drive this thing straight into the water and straight out of the water again if you so choose. It's also pretty heavily armored. It's got the ability to take 8 RPGs or 8 homing missiles. So overall, this vehicle is going to be very useful for a solo player in PvP, and I figured it was a good one to kick off the list. It is a little bit slow, which is why it's so far down, but we do have a few vehicles coming up that are going to make up for that, so let's get into number 9. Next up at number 9, we have the P996 Laser, which goes for $6.5 million off of Warstock, or of course, you can just come to the military base and steal one. You can use Ghost Org to get this if you so choose, or of course, you can just bribe authorities with Lester as soon as you grab this thing and then just simply fly it away and go and use it until it dies. The Laser is a pretty good jet in Grand Theft Auto Online. It's definitely one of the more maneuverable ones in the game. It's also quite fast. Obviously, it is a fighter jet, but its best feature truly is its autocannon that it has. You can shoot this thing at quite a far distance and take anything out in pretty much one hit, unless it's very heavily armored, which it's going to take about 2 seconds instead of just, a millisecond. So overall, this vehicle is super good for solo players. Obviously, it's not really going to benefit from having anybody else because it is only a soloable vehicle. There's no additional seats in this thing, so you're pretty much forced to use only one player, but that does make it very good for solo players because obviously there's no one else to be in it. That's it for the P996 Laser at number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Bravado Buffalo STX. The Buffalo STX is one of the first Imani tech vehicles that we got into Grand Theft Auto Online, meaning that this thing can be equipped with a remote control device, or of course, a missile lock-on jammer, which is what I would recommend putting on this car every single time. It can also be equipped with front-mounted machine guns that deal out a pretty hefty amount of damage. You can take out vehicles with these things relatively easily, and they are at a pretty good height on the STX. It also has an armor upgrade which will allow it to take 4 RPGs and 12 homing missiles, which is a pretty good amount, and with the missile lock-on jammer, obviously those homing missiles aren't even going to be able to lock onto your vehicle, so that is very useful. On top of this, it's also got an oil slick proximity mine dropper, and it has bullet resistant windows up to 15 shots from an assault rifle and about 4 shots from a heavy sniper. So this vehicle will protect you while allowing you to get away from pesky things like Oppressor Mark IIs or jets with homing missiles. It's also pretty fast, being the fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online, so overall the STX is a great vehicle for solo players. Let's move on to number 7. Next up at number 7, we have the Pegassi Toreador. Now this thing was previously one of the best vehicles to use as a solo player in Grand Theft Auto Online. However, it has since been nerfed with the release of the Los Santos Drug Wars DLC. It used to have infinite missiles, but now it only has 30, so after you've used all 30 missiles, you're going to have to despawn it and respawn it in to be able to get those missiles back. However, it is still a relatively good vehicle because it does have some armor. It can take about 6 homing missiles or about 4 RPGs, which is a decent amount, I would say, overall. On top of that, it's also got front-mounted machine guns, which deal out a pretty decent amount of damage. You can take vehicles out very quickly with these, and the missiles have some of the most aggressive tracking in the entire game, so that is another great feature. On top of this, it also has a rocket boost, like you guys can see right here, making this thing able to go very, very quick, and you can get away from danger relatively easily with this car overall, I would say. And of course, on top of all of this, it is a submersible vehicle. When you're underwater on PC, you can press X for the sonar, which will alert you to underwater pings, and you can also turn it into a full-blown submarine. and you can use the boost underwater as well. So the Toreador, definitely a great vehicle to have. It goes for $3.6 million, but it's easily one of the best vehicles to use as a solo player. So that's pretty much it for the Toreador. Let's move on to number 6. Next up, one of the most trusted and reliable vehicles for PvP in Grand Theft Auto Online that is also good for solo PvPers. This is of course the Nightshark, coming in at $1.25 million. Nightshark is one of the most armored vehicles in the game that is also one of the fastest armored vehicles in the game. The Nightshark has a top speed of about 115 miles per hour, which is pretty damn fast, and it can take 27 homing missiles as well as 8 RPGs. It also has front-mounted machine guns, although these do absolutely terrible damage, so I wouldn't even really recommend using them, but they are operatable by the driver, which kind of goes in line with this list overall, I would say. Definitely a great vehicle to use for solo players. I think everybody pretty much knows about the Nightshark, so let's go ahead and move on to number 5. Next up, we have the Omni EGT, coming in at $1.8 million. Now, this is arguably one of the best vehicles for solo players in Grand Theft Auto Online for PvPing, because it has a Monty tech similar to the Bravado Buffalo STX. However, the EGT is a little bit different than the STX. This is a second generation Imani tech vehicle, meaning that it kind of works a little bit differently. The armor on this vehicle is better than the STX's. It can take between 12 and 20 RPGs. Now, the official number is 12. I've personally seen it take 20. I'll put that on screen right now for you guys. It is an electric vehicle and it's all-wheel drive, so it gets a very good launch off the line. Now, because of its heavier armor compared to the STX, it does not get bullet-resistant windows and it does not get front-mounted machine guns. However, it is a little bit faster off the line, which is good, and it does get an oil slick proximity mine dropper as well. So this is a very good vehicle for solo players in Grand Theft Auto Online. It goes for $1.8 million, which is a pretty fair price, all things considered, with what you get with this vehicle. Definitely one of the vehicles I recommend the most to everybody in Grand Theft Auto Online. This vehicle is absolutely insane. That's it for number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Next up, we have the Pegasi Oppressor Mark II. Now, this is arguably the best vehicle for solos in PvP in Grand Theft Auto Online, because it is another vehicle that's only operatable by a single person. Everybody knows the Oppressor Mark II. You've been griefed by it at least once in your lifetime. That is pretty much a guarantee. It has a limit of 20 aggressive homing missiles. These are the second most aggressive homing missiles in the entire game, maybe even the third by now, because this thing did actually get nerfed with the release of the Criminal Enterprises DLC back in the summer. The Oppressor Mark II is still very, very useful, but it is pretty easy to take somebody off of this thing in an auto-aim lobby. So that's why I've put it a little bit lower on this list, and with the nerf, I don't think that it's truly one of the best vehicles for solo players anymore, especially in PvP. Generally, I think that it is a great vehicle as far as usefulness goes and for grinding. I don't really think that you can beat the Oppressor Mark II for those two things. So that's pretty much it for the Mark II. Let's move on to number 3. Next up, we have the TM02 Controli, coming in at $2.9 million if you have the trade price, all the way up to $3.9 million if you do not have the trade price. However, this thing is going to cost you some extra money, because on top of that, you're going to need to own a facility to have this thing, and to upgrade it, you're also going to need an Avenger. So it is a relatively expensive vehicle with all those things considered. However, it is definitely a great vehicle for solo players to use in Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing is equipable with a railgun turret. As you guys can see, it charges up, and with this turret, you will get some additional range than you normally would over the regular turret. Now, the majority of the good features of the Controli are accessible by the driver, which means that it is good for solo players, which is why it's on this list. Obviously, the main turret is operated by the driver of the vehicle, and it also has a proximity mine dropper, which is also operated by the driver of the vehicle. You can spam these down, so if anybody's chasing you, they will blow up, like this poor guy right here. Oh, rough. Now, this vehicle does technically kind of benefit from having additional players in it. Somebody can operate the top-mounted machine gun on this, as well as the 2 grenade launchers that you see on the turret, but those things really aren't the main reason that you even have a Controli. It's mostly for the big turret that the driver gets access to, which is why this thing is on this list. It can take 8 RPGs or 8 homing missiles, the exact same as the APC that we covered a little bit earlier, although this thing is a little bit more useful because you can run vehicles over with it as well to destroy people. So that is also kind of a benefit of the Controli. Overall, great vehicle for solo players. That's pretty much it. Let's move on to number 2. Next up at number 2, we have the Hydra. The Hydra is a solo jet similar to the P996 Laser, except this thing is a little bit different. The Hydra goes for $3 million up to $4 million depending on if you have the trade price, and as you guys can see, it is a VTOL jet, so you can vertically take off and land with this jet, and then of course you can change it into regular jet mode. Now the Hydra is actually faster than the P996 Laser, however it has a little bit less maneuverability, but what it lacks in maneuverability is made up by VTOL mode, because this thing can go to a lot of places that the P996 Laser cannot. Obviously you can pop hover mode with the Hydra anytime and use it to get into places that you wouldn't normally be able to get to with a jet. The Hydra also gets access to the exact same cannon as the Laser, which is that explosive autocannon that I was demonstrating earlier that's really overpowered. Unarmored vehicles stand absolutely no chance to this thing, and even if they do have armor, they're maybe going to take 2 seconds to be completely destroyed. So the Hydra is a very good vehicle. It also has homing missiles as well as non-homing missiles too, so this is a very well armed vehicle. Unfortunately, it has absolutely no armor. This thing can take about 2, maybe 3 explosive rounds and 1 homing missile before it's completely incapacitated. So it's not exactly a very strong vehicle, but it is good for soloing because obviously it only has 1 passenger. So it is a great solo vehicle, I think. The Hydra is personally my favorite jet in the entire game. I use this thing all the time. Definitely would recommend picking it up. That's pretty much it for number 2. Let's move on to number 1. And the number 1 best vehicle for solo PvP players in Grand Theft Auto Online is of course the Akula. The majority of the Akula's features are usable by the pilot, so obviously you, the solo player. This thing goes for $2.8 million if you have the trade price unlocked, or $3.8 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. The Akula benefits from a lot of really great features, the first of which, and the most important, being stealth mode. Stealth mode is activatable by pressing H on PC or right on the D-pad, I believe, on console. Without stealth mode, you can use every single weapon that the Akula has available to it other than the one weapon that is operatable by the co-pilot. However, with stealth mode activated, you will not be able to use any weapons on this vehicle. But, of course, when you're in stealth mode, you get completely removed from the minimap and the large expanded map completely. Nobody will know where you are unless they actually see your physical helicopter flying around. So this is a pretty great ability to have for PvPing. You can completely surprise people. If they go into an apartment, for example, you can camp outside of it in your Akula in stealth mode and they will be none the wiser. When they come out, obviously you deactivate stealth mode and then absolutely destroy them. Now the pilot of the Akula gets access to either a 4-missile barrage or homing missiles. Now this is dependent on what you upgrade the Akula with. You can choose between these 2 options. I recommend the barrage honestly, but I do use homing missiles on both of my Akulas because I use them to do headhunter and missions like that, and the barrage just isn't quite as good for missions as the homing missiles are. The pilot also gets access to a bomb bay, so you can drop bombs on people. This is a great thing to do with the stealth mode. You get right above somebody, deactivate stealth mode, and just drop a bunch of bombs on them. I've done this a few times. It is a absolute blast. So much fun. And the pilot also gets access to the dual miniguns on the kind of on the wings here, like you guys can see right here. The Akula is also the 3rd fastest helicopter in the entire game, so you can get around very quickly with this vehicle. And of course it is a 4-seater, so on the off chance you're playing with some friends, you can seat up to 3 other people in this helicopter. So overall, the Akula is probably the best solo vehicle for PvPing in Grand Theft Auto Online, in my opinion. Anyway guys, there you have it. That is it for the top 10 best solo PvP vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys enjoyed this video, a like is of course appreciated. If not, dislike. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.